started here. So welcome everyone to the Native CDFI Network's weekly Friday meeting and check-in. We have been getting together since the beginning of the COVID shutdown to connect our members and share information and network with our folks and help everybody to move forward through these real challenges that our people are facing and the country is facing. Really excited about our guests here today and our featured member today. This week, we are joined by Jodie Harris, who's the director of the CDFI Fund. And I think all her remarks will be pertinent and interesting to every single one of our CDFI members. Welcome to our CDFI allies and friends as well. So thanks for joining us. Let's get started. As always, we'll start off with a purpose. We're here to share information that's timely to help our members grow, learn. We're here to learn from each other and learn feedback and to connect, because our members are doing things individually in their own communities, but together collectively we're helping move Indian country forward. So thank you for what you do. Here's a really quick overview of our agenda today. And I promise everyone that we will not go over the hour. I know we have some real webinar warriors online with us today. So, but I'll make sure we don't go over the hour. As usual, we'll start with legislative and administrative updates. Then we'll hear from our special guest, Jodie Harris. And then we'll hear from our featured member, Stephen Hires, who's from the Cherokee Nation's CDFI. I'm really excited about that. And we have a couple announcements that we'll finish off with. And if you all have announcements you want to share, we'd love to hear them. And as always, this is a free-flowing conversation. We are all on the same team and working together for very similar missions. So please feel free to jump in, raise your hand, or ask questions. Before I move forward, I want to stop and pause and see if Pete Upton, our board chairman, or any of our board members. I think we have Cindy Middlestat from Alaska and Christopher Coburn from the Muskogee Fund. If you all had any comments or questions before we get going.
Thank you, Jackson, again for our weekly updates. And I am traveling today to work with a client on one of my first outings since COVID. So you'll have to apologize if I go in and out, but for now I'm connected. So I'm excited to hear from Jodie, Clint, and our Oklahoma friends down there. There's a lot of good things that happen down in Oklahoma. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Chairman. Cindy or Christopher, have any thoughts or any words?
Good morning, everyone. This is Cindy Middlestat from Anchorage, Alaska. And I'm equally excited to hear from Ms. Harris and our speakers today, too. So very curious. I did want to just make a mention of a new guidance that has been instituted by SBA, and it is intended to reach those in the commercial fishing sector. So that new guidance came out this morning, and I believe it's a result of our congressional members here in Alaska too. So in short, what that guidance offers is vessel operators can now count their cruise shares as payroll when submitting to the PPP. Though it's a bit late and we know that we're up against a deadline, but that fix is in now. So with that, just a note to those that might benefit from that nugget too. So with that, thank you, Jackson, and thank you to all those in advance here this morning that will participate.
Jackson, this is Christopher from Muskogee Fund. We're excited that these calls have been going on for this time. Glad to have CDFI Fund. Glad to hear from Cherokee brethren over and seeing what's going on in Tahlequah. That's one side of my family, so glad to hear about what they've got going on and what we can learn. Hoping that we can get an update from CDFI Fund on maybe a timeline or how things might be impacted on pending applications for this year's NACO. That would probably be helpful to all members. And just looking forward to hearing the information. Thanks.
Great. Well, Thank you again, everybody. And I promise we'll be done before the hour. I want to start off with some recent news that I think is relevant to some of our folks. The Treasury came out with some frequently asked questions for the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And as we remember, that's the fund of I think $8 billion that went out to tribes. And there were obviously lots of questions, and I know some of our members have great relationships with their tribal government and are working actively to help their tribes administer and deliver and grant out some of these funds. So I thought this might be relevant. I highlighted a few questions, but if you want to go, you can also go to this website to look at them. The first one here is, must the state and local government require applications to be submitted by businesses and individuals before providing assistance to the fund? And so there's an answer to that. I'll skip over some of these. But this is relevant to our members. So may recipients deposit fund payments into interest-bearing accounts? And the answer is yes, with some caveats. And so this, if any of our members have good relationships and are looking to take on and manage some of these funds for the short term, you can put them into interest-bearing accounts. And also the money can be used for emergency financial assistance to individuals and family members directly impacted by a loss if it's due to a public health emergency. So that is some good news. Again, is really highlighting these so you can go back and look at them if they're relevant to you. And this last one is pretty important as well. So may a unit of local government receiving a fund payment transfer the funds to another unit of government? And the answer is yes. And I think I'll jump to this piece. May recipients use fund payments to provide loans? And the answer up to that is also yes. So that is also very much in the wheelhouse of our native CDFIs. And may fund payments be provided to nonprofits for distribution to individuals in need of assistance, such as rent relief? And the Treasury's answer to that frequently asked question is also yes. Nonprofits may be used to distribute assistance. And so I think these are good and relevant pieces of information. So hopefully they can help some of our members, and our members are able to help their members. So with that, I'll pivot over to just a quick update on one bill that we're watching that was introduced recently. HR 2 is a $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill that was introduced in the House by House Democrats. It's likely to move through the House, but it likely will not move in the Senate. There is a provision there about new market tax credits that we wanted to flag for our members, and it includes proportional allocation of qualified equity investments based on the number of Native Americans relative to the proportion of the U.S. population, which is at or below poverty line. And so what that is trying to attempts to take address the problem that new market tax credits really are not being utilized in Native communities. And then on top of that, as the Native CDFI Network and others have noted, Native controlled CDEs have not gained allocation in recent years for new market tax credits. So that's been a problem. And so while this doesn't directly address the allocation method, it does address where the new market tax credits projects would go. So that is important to note, but it also does not have set aside language or targeted language that Native CDFI Network has been pushing for quite some time. I want to flag that. And again, feel free to jump in if any. I guess I'll pause right here with those legislative and administrative updates before we get to the fun stuff, and see if anyone has any questions. Just feel free to type a question or chime in. Okay. Well, with that, let's get to the fun stuff. We're really excited to have our featured guest here this week, Jodie Harris, who is the director of the CDFI Fund. I think most folks have met her, and this is actually her second webinar with native CDFIs this week. And she joined our friends at AWISA earlier, and we're hoping to build off that conversation, hopefully take it a little deeper and allow for more questions and answers from our members. So really appreciate Jodie being here. Jodie's originally from Philadelphia. She holds an MBA and Master's in Public Administration as well. So obviously very well educated, very smart, and has worked with the CDFI Fund for, I'm thinking 13 years now. That's what I'm doing the math here. So obviously very knowledgeable, knows the CDFI Fund programs inside and out. And it's been, I guess, mine and Pete's pleasure to meet with Jodie for the first time when she was out visiting Indian country in New Mexico, learning about some of the challenges our folks have there. So I'm really excited to have Jodie here. And I guess while doing this, she's also joined by Clint Hastings, who's a member of the Cherokee Nation. And he's also someone who's got a great background and trained as a lawyer. We used to work for the Cherokee Nation's their Washington office, and also has worked with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, so knows Cherokee Nation, Indian country very well. Is obviously one of us, and also has won probably every he's won the competition for facial hair growth in the COVID. So thank you, Jodie. Thank you, Clint. Can you tell us a bit about what CDFI Fund has been doing in response to COVID, and also I think what our folks, we want to let our folks ask some questions, but I think we're also looking, what can our folks do to coordinate with the CDFI Fund, and also are there any opportunities for native CDFIs moving forward? So, thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jackson. I appreciate being called the fun stuff. I guess it's all relative now in this world of staying at home. So hopefully you all will find our conversation helpful. I'm certainly glad and thankful to MCN and to you, Jackson, for inviting Clint and I to participate. We have been moving along in our regularly scheduled programming, so I'll give some updates on that. But I do want to say, especially to all of the folks who have dialed in, that you all have done a great job of keeping in touch with the CDFI Fund throughout this COVID-19 pandemic, and letting us know the issues that are important to your members and to tribes in general. So we appreciate that feedback. We read everything, we look at everything, and now with Clint as our Associate Program Manager for Native Initiatives, we are really paying attention to some of the issues that are coming across our plate as relates to CDFIs and native CDFIs in particular. Let me just start with a little bit around COVID-19. So as everyone is aware, we have not received a appropriation or a specific program to address the pandemic. And we're hoping that in some of these conversations, and we've been in touch with a number of people, that we're able to get an appropriation to allow us to do some emergency funding to support you all in terms of capital and liquidity to continue to support your communities. What we are doing as well is taking a look at our internal processes. So, you know, as it relates to letters we received, one from NCN on our application timeline, we looked at the window, looked at our process and said, okay, we can extend it. We're taking a similar lens to other programs. So for example, compliance and reporting. I know that a lot of CDFIs are really struggling to balance the different demands that are coming through with COVID, as well as make sure that they maintain their compliance requirements with us. So right now, we're looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. And I want to make sure that folks know that you can reach out to us and submit a service request through our AMIS system in order to get some sort of relief or request a postponement, or to request any type of issue, or let us know about an issue you're having with, as it relates to reporting. We know that, you know, this is one of those times where we need to make some decisions across the board for how our programs will impact our CDFIs, but we also don't want to make them too soon. So before we come out with any blanket policy, we're just encouraging you all to just email us, submit your service request, and we'll work with you to figure out what type of extension you may need or what type of allowance you are requesting. And so we'll work with you to do that. In the meantime, we're still looking at everything across the board to see if there's a point in time where we need to do something across the board for everyone. As it relates to our programming, as I mentioned, we're moving along. All of our rounds are open in some form or fashion. As you know, with the CDFI and the NACA program, that round, the application process closed on April 30th, and we received 588 applications from groups across the country. And what we have in terms of appropriations is about 199 million. So as you all know, we're always oversubscribed. We received specifically 14 million in the NACA program for the FA and TA awards. How it shakes out in the application base, though, is that we got applications from 30 organizations requesting 23.5 million in NACA FA awards, and 28 organizations requested 4.1 million in TA awards under the NACA program. So while we are oversubscribed, I think the good news is that we are on track to announce our awards by the end of the fiscal year. We're not going to separate it like we did last year. Last year we did the TA and the FA separately because of the shutdown. But this year we're on track to announce both FA and TA at the same time and before September 30th. And I think, you know, we're in good position to do that. Now, it's not the huge amount of emergency funding that we are hoping comes through in the stimulus package, but it is capital that you all need to do the work in your community. So we've been focused on staying on time. I think absence of any funding, that's like the best thing we can do right now, is to make sure that we continue to get our funding out the door as soon as possible. We also have been moving forward, and Clint has been leading the charge on this, with our Native CDFI Sustainability and Impact Resource Bank. So where we can't provide funding, we're still trying to provide resources in the form of technical assistance. We just recently completed the training, which we were calling BNCSI2. Clint, you correct me if I'm wrong. And as you know, we partnered with ICF Incorporated and First Nations Elisa to deliver a technical assistance training platform. So all of those resources, including the training presentations, recordings, the links, and the references, they're now available on our training and technical assistance website. So while they may not specifically address COVID-19, because I think the issues that you all are facing are unique and challenging, they will provide some information for how to shore up capital, how to reach out to your communities, how to support your members. And so hopefully you can align that with the emergency work that you're having to do in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The last thing I want to mention before we jump into, oh, Clint, were you going to say something? Oh, no, sorry. The last thing I want to mention before we jump into Q&A, because I think that'll probably be the most beneficial part of our discussion, is to talk a little bit about certification. So you probably have seen that we released a request for comment on our new certification application. And this has been something that's been in the works long before I became director, where we are trying to shore up our policies and our practice around certifying organizations to ensure that groups that want to be CDFIs actually have a primary mission of community and economic development, and that we are able to make sure that their products and their services align with that mission. You know, our goal is to not only support the growth and the reach of CDFIs, especially as it relates to your ability to innovate and take advantage of new types of technology or new types of services or new types of way of serving your community, but it's also to look at how we minimize the burden on CDFIs. I think specifically Native CDFIs, you know, the burden is greater. You have a lot more challenges that you need to deal with. And so we're trying to be mindful of that and give you all additional support in how you maintain certification and how you report. And we're also trying internally to build our efficiency for rendering CDFI certification determinations. We take a long time, and we're trying to make the process such that we decrease that time, but we also want to make sure that we're, you know, protecting the CDFI brand. So a few things to highlight, and we do hope, Jackson, that you are able to work with the NCN members to put together some responses, because we would love to hear from Native CDFIs on your position around certification. And the comment period goes on until August 5th. So we do have more time, but we would love to hear how this would impact the Native CDFI's ability to maintain certification. The key areas that we have made changes in is geographic restrictions. We basically had a system where you were required to draw the map. I'm sure all the CDFIs are kind of shaking their head about, yeah, this is a part of the process that really limits the amount of work that we're able to do. But now we're looking at if you are engaged in an activity outside of your approved area, but it would otherwise qualify, then you would be able to count that towards your certification. So we're not limiting you to the map that you have to draw. We're also looking at the Native CDFI designation specifically. Currently, the CDFI fund allows entities that primarily serve Native communities to self-designate as Native CDFIs. And what we're proposing to do is to change that designation in order to demonstrate a strong representation of Native communities through one of two options. So we're looking at the governing, if you have a governing board, we're going to require that at least 33% of the governing board are members of a Native community population or residents of a Native community geography, and that at least 50% of such representatives are a member of a Native community population. If you're going to be using an advisory board, we are going to require that at least 60% of the advisory board are members of Native community populations or residents. And then that at least 50% of that advisory board is also a member of a Native community. And so we're doing this not to make it harder to become a CDFI, but we're doing this specifically for Native CDFIs to ensure that groups that just don't come in and invest are able to later claim that, yes, I'm a Native CDFI, and are able to take advantages of being a Native CDFI. We want to ensure that Native communities are represented and that groups have to show that they have that accountability to Native communities. The last thing real quick is tied to that is that we have a series of changes to our reporting, which while it may look overwhelming in terms of we're adding data, we're also removing some data. You'll see that we're going to try and collect data on the entire CDFI universe. Right now, we just collect data from folks that have grants with our institutions on a regular basis, but now we're expanding that to be able to collect data on all certified CDFIs. So we'll have a robust picture of the industry, and hopefully that data will be useful to you all as you do your work. So you'll have data on all Native CDFIs, not just the ones that had participated in our FA or TA program. So all of that is in the public comment. And again, we hope to hear from NCN and you, Jackson, on what your comments are about that. I think I'll stop there because I've been talking for quite a bit, and it's always hard on virtual calls to kind of gauge where people are, if people have hand raised. And I'll just open it up to questions for me and Clint. Clint, I don't know if you want to say anything before we get into questions.
I'll just take a moment to say thank you, Jackson, and the Native CDFI Network members for inviting us. And for those of you who are members, I don't know, how much you see the day-to-day operations and work that Jackson does, but, I can assure you that you all have been tremendously well represented throughout, always, but particularly throughout the outbreak of the COVID-19 situation. Jackson's been in regular contact with us, always providing very thoughtful, very helpful recommendations and asking very pertinent, appropriate questions to ensure that your interests are represented at the CDFI Fund. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, appreciate that, Jodie. Appreciate that, Clint. And now we'd like to open up for questions from our members. And the way this thing works is usually folks start off slow and then we get big. So how about we start big with our questions and then slow down? Otherwise, I have some. And feel free to jump in, folks. Yeah.
Hey, this is Dave. I'm usually not shy. I just wanted to thank Ms. Harris and Clint and the staff there. She had mentioned something about communicating through Amos. Things are changing quickly. Obviously, we all know that things are changing for our organizations, for the communities we serve, the individuals, the landscape, our partners, etc. We had a situation where we needed to revise our goals and metrics, and the CDFI fund staff were very responsive, helping us get through that. So I just want to encourage everyone else that's on the call, if things are changing on the ground for you, and your existing grants have goals and metrics that are going to be difficult to achieve or are changing, I really encourage you to put those requests in, get in touch with staff. They were very, very helpful in helping us work through that. So I just want to thank them for that. And then the question I had, it's a topic that we've been talking about for some time now, is the PPP, and a number of us CDFIs had gotten access to PPP, but then either the rules changed on us or the interpretation of the rules changed, or maybe there's still a need for clarification how the CDFI fund and staff within Treasury can, should, or would advocate on that front. It's a gray area still, and not sure how that's going to get resolved at the end of the day. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for your comment, Dave, particularly as it relates to making sure you reach out to us, especially Native CDFIs who have a June 30th deadline on some of their reporting. Just send in, when we hang up, send in your service request, and we'll take a look at it and we'll work with you on that. As it relates to your question on PPP, I will say, and I echo Clint's comments on Jackson's perseverance and diligence in reaching out to us on those issues. We were well informed about the issues affecting Native CDFIs due to letters we received and conversations with Jackson on the issue. CDFI Fund was involved in some development of PPP, but quite frankly, not as much as I would have liked. The PPP program is jointly administered through SBA and through Treasury. And as you all probably guessed from all of the communications that have been coming out, it changes every day, and it is, it's fairly complicated in terms of how it's being administered, and how the regulations and the information is being disseminated. But we have been part of the conversation. We have impressed upon those making the decisions that CDFIs, particularly the small CDFIs, the Native CDFIs, the groups that are in the places where there just is no bank presence, are important to this effort. So they know it, they've heard it. I can't say that there will be any changes to any of the regulations because of it, but it has been communicated, and I think that anything going forward, which is why we're hopeful that future stimulus actions will recognize the value of CDFIs, that will be on top of mind, because I think there are a lot of people, not just within the government, but within Congress, that part of the government anyway, within Treasury and within Congress and in the communities at large, are recognizing how CDFIs have been stepping in during this crisis. So just know that we are there educating people on the benefit and the value of working with Native CDFIs and others who are in these communities that need the most assistance. Hopefully we'll see something soon, but just know that we've heard from you and we are continuing to educate people on the value.
Thank you.
Thanks. Pete, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Jodie, it's Pete Upton. Nice to have you on the call today, you and Clint and Stephen. The question I have is, as I read through the updated ACR and the certification proposal, do you have anywhere that we could compare what is current and then what the changes are? As I read through that, occasionally I see that, sections to where it says these are the changes. But what I'd like to see is what in comparison. I don't know if you have an original copy anywhere that's out there.
So the original copy would be our current policy. So we haven't changed our policy at all. The information, and I can follow up with Jackson after this to make sure that you get that information, but our application and our guidance that's on our certification page of our website is the current policy, and that is what you would be comparing to the proposed application. And so they look really different because we're moving to an AMIS environment with the new application. So lining them up, you would be able to look at it section by section, but we don't have necessarily like a marked up copy that we have on the website. So let me circle back with the team, and then I'll connect with Jackson on the best way to get that out. But it's a great point about how do you actually assess the changes if you don't have the original one in front of you. So I'll take that back to the team.
Okay. And then the other question I had, and maybe I'm reading into it, but I know the tracking of different equity investments, the CDFI may get, and whether it be through CRA credits, does that have anything to do with, as you get a CRA credit, that won't be held against you when it comes to any allocation that may be coming to you potentially through the CDFI fund? I noticed that they're going to start tracking different types of maybe an EQ2 investment through a CRA. Does that make sense?
So we have, and Pete, just cut me off if I'm not summarizing your comment properly. So we have published also a equity investment request for information. And that is based on our internal policy on how we record mainly financial assistance grants that have been recorded as equity. So that's an internal policy that we're trying to develop. It's not connected to CRA.
Okay.
CRA and its changes with the OCC going down one path and FDIC and the Fed staying on another, I don't think they've quite worked out the details how they're going to be counting specific investments and how, equity versus EQ2 versus debt will rank in terms of application to the overall rating on CRA. So they're two separate things. How we look at investments isn't necessarily tied to the CRA piece of it. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And this is Jackson. I think one other thought on that is that best case scenario, the new CRA rules encourage equity investments in native CDFIs, and native CDFIs get hopefully a big piece of investment, equity investment. With that, I think we just want to make sure that those investments don't count negatively toward us as we apply for native CDFI funds from the CDFI fund. I think that's that.
Right. Yeah, no, Jason, that they wouldn't count negatively at all. They're two separate things, and when we look at the balance sheet and that sort of thing, we don't care if it's through CRA investment or if it comes from a foundation or what have you. They're two separate reviews.
Okay. Great. I think we have a question from Cindy Middlestat from Bristol Bay Development. Cindy, you want to, or I can read it if you don't.
Sure. So thank you, Jodie. I'm just curious, do you have any insights on the success of opportunity zones in Native communities?
That's a great question, Cindy, and I don't actually. There isn't outside of anecdotally, and we keep track of CDFI investments and what we can read in the news and through the trades and other groups, but there isn't really a clearinghouse right now or a way for all of the projects to be made available to the public. So our role in opportunity zones was setting up the process for governors to select the census tracts that they wanted to designate as opportunity zones. The IRS has been handling all of the rulemaking and guidance, and if there is any data collection, it will likely fall under them. So no, I haven't heard anything. I would encourage all the members on the line, if you know of projects or you know of opportunity zones happening, feel free to send us information and we kind of keep tabs on it that way. I would also say that as relates to COVID-19, we are keeping track of what CDFIs are doing to support their communities. And so we're always looking for the stories and examples of how you all are making impact, because it helps us when we have our conversations with folks on the Hill or folks within the administration. So if you want to kind of share what you know with us, we can help share what we know with others. But Cindy, to your specific question, I don't have any insight on that.
Thank you, Cindy. I think Christopher Coburn, did you have another question? Cool. All right. We have time for one more question. And
Yeah,
then
I do. I heard Jodie mention something about, that the CDFI fund was provided instruction on governors deciding where the opportunity zones are. That's a bit problematic with tribal lands within states, because those aren't necessarily chosen to the benefit of sovereign native tribes. So I don't know how much thought went into that, or if there's anything that tribal nations within a state can have to change where those zones are to benefit tribal nations. I don't know that tribal nations were included in that discussion. It's a unique area, a problem. Maybe it's just a problem in Oklahoma, but it's something that I think the chiefs of the tribes, if there's an opportunity zone that could be in an area for their land, could get in that discussion.
Great. Thanks for that comment, Christopher. I'll take that back to the team. The development of the database predates me, but I can follow up to see how that was considered in terms of the governor's designating the opportunity zones. I mean, in an ideal situation, they would have consulted before they designated the census tracts, but we know that doesn't always happen. So let me circle back and see if there's any additional information I can gather on that.
Okay. Well, great. And with that, we'll have to conclude this section because we have another fun feature we're doing. So thank you very much, Jodie. Thank you very much, Clint. And we look forward to working with you moving forward for many years to come. And one thing I'd like to add is if we're fortunate and we're fortunate to get $1 billion for the CDFI fund in a future stimulus package, we want to make sure that the native CDFIs are included in that. I know that they are going to look to the CDFI fund for some recommendations and ultimately rules about how that'll be spent. And I know they've put some guidelines there, but we want to make sure that our folks are included in your considerations if we are that fortunate. But thank you again. Really appreciate your time, and feel free to drop off if you have to go or continue listening on the rest of our conversation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jackson. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you.
Cool. All right. And with that, I'm also excited to introduce our featured member this week. And our featured member this week comes from the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. And so today's been a big Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma Day. Last week we had Nakota and natives from up north. This week is Oklahoma. So, so Stephen Hires works with the Cherokee Nation Economic Development Trust, which is the nation's CDFI out in Oklahoma. But he's also got, he seems like a really busy guy from when I've been able to find out online. He also serves on the Tahlequah City Council, so he's involved in local government, and he's also worked with Congressman Dan Boren, who used to represent Oklahoma, and was also Cherokee descended. So we really appreciate Stephen being on and speaking with us. Both he and I think his team, Brian, have been really engaged in our webinar series over the past few weeks, and we wanted to make sure we heard from them, learn more about them, learn more about Cherokee Nation and the CDFI, and what you all are doing moving forward. So, Stephen, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the Cherokee Nation CDFI?
Well, thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here today and to get to talk a little bit about the work that the Cherokee Nation Economic Development Trust Authority is doing in Northeast Oklahoma and within Indian country. So it's an honor to get to see some of my friends. I think that's been a great part of having these calls every Friday and getting to be on them is getting to see, friends from all over the United States and, get to hear the great work that they're doing. And so thank you for inviting us. So like everyone, it's been kind of a crazy time for Northeast Oklahoma and the Cherokee Nation. And so we have really just been kind of working our way through this pandemic and doing the best that we can. So when it started, the Cherokee Nation was very proactive in measures that they took at the very beginning and getting everything done. And so, our government essentially sent us all home to work and work from home. And so that's where, I still am today. And so if you wonder, kind of where the bookcase behind me and whatnot. So right off the bat, we knew that we were going to have an issue, especially with some of our clients, because, our clients, as I'm sure your clients are in the business, don't have necessarily a banking relationship. And so we knew that a lot of the assistance that was going to come down through that to businesses were going to come down through banks. And so we needed to be proactive in our approach and how we offered services for them. And so the first thing we did is we have about 177 business clients, active loans, and then we have about 1,500 in consumer loans. So that's just kind of our portfolio for you all. So the first thing that we did is we gave all of our business loans the option for a 3-month deferral, just to add those payments onto the end of their loan. So, we understand that this is a tough time, and we don't want to be something that you're having to worry about in addition to everything else that is going on. So we sent that out. It was an option. It wasn't automatic. I will tell you that we had about a 75% rate of business clients that took us up on that and said, yes, we want to, defer our payments. We had several that said, we're able to still stay open. We really appreciate everything that you're doing and to helping us, but right now we want to continue making, our payments as we can. We had about 15 probably in May, 15 to 20 in May that then came back in and said, maybe, we should have taken you up on it and we'd like to take you up on it now. And so we were able to add them to the mix. Thankfully, because of our relationship with the Cherokee Nation, we aren't as reliant on the operation end of the loan fund and the payments coming in. And so we were able to be liberal with this, with our policy there. And so that has been, very helpful because I think, the Cherokee Nation has 5 different buckets of funding. And, just if you're looking in our commercial loans, I think our average payments coming in is somewhere around $120,000 to $125,000 a month as far as payments coming back into us. And the average payment over the last 3 months, as far as deposits, payments coming back in, has been about $30,000. And so you see that's a huge, shift in where we were at. And so it's been kind of an interesting time for us. And so we're just happy to have those, be able to make those arrangements for our clients. And then we've also really been helping push them to bank loan, or to the bank and the SBA and whatnot, that can help them. And so we formed some relationships with some banks that were able to take on our clients, because at the beginning, several of the big banks said, if you don't have a account with us, then we're not going to help you with the PPP loans. But we were able to look at some community banks and form those relationships. And so that'll be a lasting relationship that'll even go beyond COVID, which is really great. I will say that one of the biggest things that we have seen is we have had a lot of new loans during this time come in the door. And I don't know if it is really because banks maybe in our area just aren't focused on new clients, or they're tightening their strings. But over the last 3 months, we have had, just in approvals, we have approved about $1.3 million worth of business loans that are businesses coming in that need the money, that want to get in and start their business. So we've really seen an uptick on that. And so, as Ms. Harris was talking, and the Native CDFI network has been talking about needing additional funding to help with businesses and help getting money out to businesses. I think that is vitally important, because as Brian can tell you, that 1.3 is just lending that has been approved over the last 3 months in businesses. That doesn't even include our pipeline of businesses that have come in to try to help get funding from us. And so we've been really, cognizant of that and watching that and making sure that we have the money to lend to them. And so I have a great team. Brian Wagner is on this call. I mean, we could not have done it without, he's been working tirelessly from home, connecting everyone, connecting the SBA programs to our clients, and making sure our clients have their needs met during this time. So I really give props to them. And I see Paul is also on this call from T. If we weren't a glutton enough for punishment during this whole time, we decided to transition our T server, our entire loan database T server, from an on-site server to the cloud. And so we wanted to just add extra headache into the whole mix, but we've gotten all of that figured out, and we're really right there. So it's just been an interesting time. We've had several clients, now that those deferments are coming due in July, regular payments are starting to pull in again. We're starting to get the clients that are asking, what can we do? Our business still isn't operating at full capacity, or we're still not being able to make ends meet. And so now we're looking at a policy to allow for three additional months of interest-only payments. We really want to get, make sure, and so I don't know, we'll work through that, whether they become interest only or they become just straight deferral. But at this point, we're kind of looking at interest only. And so I don't know if you have any questions. That's just kind of the quick and easy of what we have been going through and dealing with.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we got a question from Dave Castillo, and Dave says, how has your underwriting adjusted or not due to the current economic conditions and the outlook, really?
Truthfully, it hasn't adjusted a whole lot. I mean, we have a pretty rigorous underwriting philosophy anyway. We have a very good credit committee that understands the mission of our CDFI and understands the reason clients come to us, and so they do a very good job of weighing risk with just the reality of what the loan package is that we have and the situation that the client is in. And so, and several of them are also bankers in their day job. And so they work for banks and commercial banks in the district and the Cherokee Nation. And so, they understand, kind of the tightening of the belt that is happening in the traditional lending institutions and kind of where their focus is. And so they've been very good to help us. But I would say that our underwriting hasn't really tightened, but it also hasn't loosened. I mean, we're not just giving loans out to anyone that walks in the door just because it's a hard time right now. And I will also add one thing. We've been working well with the BIA and working with them with the BIA loan guarantees. And over this time, it really has, that maybe that's one thing that our credit committee has really kind of tightened is not doing the loans unless we're able to, attach that BIA guarantee to it. Where in the past, they might have, let one by that wasn't eligible for the BIA guarantee.
Cool. And we got one more from says the Cherokee Nation CDFI serve other natives in their jurisdiction.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. So our CDFI, we only work within the 14 counties. So the historic reservation of the Cherokee Nation is the 14 northeast counties in Oklahoma. And it's all of 7 and part of 7, but we work within the entirety of the county. So like Tulsa, for instance, is the town, that most everybody can point to on a map in Oklahoma. Tulsa proper is not necessarily, just a very small slither of Tulsa and Tulsa County is actually in with the Cherokee Nation. But because we go into that county, we'll serve the whole county. And we will serve any federally recognized Native American within, that jurisdiction. And, we also there are several CDFIs here. Our friends from the Creek Nation were on, the Citizen Potawatomi. And they, if we can't serve them, we always, send, that's the very first thing that we say is, you're not within our jurisdiction or, you're in Creek County. And so, please contact those CDFIs. But we serve any federally recognized citizen within the 14 counties.
Well, great. I think we have got time for one more quick question, folks.
Yeah.
I guess I have one more quick question. So I think you all used to have a relationship with the SBA for SBA loans. Do you all still do SBA loans?
No, we don't. We probably should, and we have looked at the SBA guarantee, and we've tried to look at some of their programs. Quite frankly, we're a little too cumbersome in the setup phase for us to go through the certifications and get certified. And part of that is, their process, but part of that is also just the process of our relationship with the Cherokee Nation and the steps that we would have to take in order to, get that done. And so we don't have any of the SBA guarantees or anything like that, but we do work. We have 2 lenders that are on our board now. They're both on our board and on our credit committee, and they do. One of them is from one of the big banks in Oklahoma, and they're the largest SBA lender in the state of Oklahoma. And so we have that ability to kind of work with them if need be, and help kind of package a loan for our client as best can be.
Well, thanks. I think that's something that we'd like to work on. I know when we did a survey of our members a while back, most members aren't doing SBA loans, but I think they'd be interested in making that a little bit easier. The handful of folks I've talked to say how, I guess, onerous the SBA application and requirements are in reporting.
Yeah, and it's really, they want a lot of information, especially about board members and principals and stuff. And it was just a hard process to get.
Oh, great. Well, I think
I see there was a sovereignty question, but then I see
sovereignty?
that Chris answered it. So, and I agree. Chris has definitely, that answer is absolutely true.
Yeah, and it could answer CRA credit. Christopher worked with us to make sure that we're able to, our NCM made comments that banks should get credit for formal reservation in Indian country, like in Oklahoma. So hopefully that sustains. Well, I said we'd end on the hour, so I want to keep that way. So Stephen, really appreciate what you're doing in Oklahoma and for the Cherokee people and Cherokee Nation. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Pete. And please, if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out. We're here and we're always happy to help.
I won't touch on this, but we're going to wrap things up. NCN's hiring an operations associate. Reach out to me for more information. But the one thing, no web call next week. Our web warriors and webinar warriors. But we got a 4th of July and I'm going to take a week off. Pete, are you still on? You have anything to wrap us up?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Jodie, Clint, and Stephen. It was a great webinar today, and we'll take a week off and be back after the 4th.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, everybody. Thank you for what you do.
Okay. Thank you.